for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
My name is Jack Prince, your fellow co-host.
Jack, we survived the bad weather that we got through yesterday in this area.
What a storm.
I have never seen anything like it in living in Michigan for 50 years. I've never have seen a storm like that.
I'm not doubting it was that severe. That's quite a claim when you think of all the hundreds of storms we've seen in 50 years.
Yeah, and we'll know more today on whether a tornado struck the area right around where I live. But we've got a lot of things to talk about, including an update to a story that we first reported on this show over 4 years ago. So we'll get to that in just a moment. And before we do, a couple of reminders that you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio, and you can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to us anytime at Spreaker.com. Do a search for Southpaws there. You can also listen to us anytime at the iTunes Store. Search podcasts for Southpaws. Look for our logo, and you've just found us. And, of course, you can listen on Pacifica Radio across the country and around the world, including KCEI-FM Taos, New Mexico, KZGM Kabul, Missouri, KOWA, Olympia, Washington, downloaded last week's show. We thank you for that. Pacifica's national. The big bosses at Pacifica downloaded us last week as well. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Maybe we're in trouble. We don't know it yet. And of course, you can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Monday night at 9 p.m. We're on right after Democracy Now! So plenty of stations airing our show, and if your Pacifica station is not airing Southpaws, please give them a call and ask them to.
Yes,
we greatly appreciate it.
That.
I've got to tell you about a phone call before we get into our stories. I received a phone call 2 weeks ago while I was editing the show. Barry Vogel from Radio Curious called me. Yeah, just out of the blue, and he was wanting some information on doing some fundraising because Barry has retired now from his regular full-time job. I had no idea, but he was an attorney for a number of years. So we talked about that. We kind of talked about how we got started in radio and our different shows. And yeah, definitely, I've talked to Barry about setting up a Patreon. So do a search for Barry Vogel under Patreon and help fund his show. He's got at least 1,000 hours of archived material that's ready and available. So that's awesome.
I got a text from a person that heard the show for the first time and said that our moniker, which says the true progressive voice, is actual. It is a true progressive broadcast. And in this world of fall, FAUX, progressives, I'm not talking about Republicans. I'm not talking about moderates. I'm talking about fall progressives. Like the whole field of what? We're down to 20 candidates now?
Maybe. Yeah, Kirsten Gillibrand dropped out of the race this week, so another one bites the dust there.
Yeah, and there's one in there, in my estimation, who's a real progressive.
Yep. And
so this
Bernie
is a
Sanders.
real progressive broadcast, and those stations you listed, I am glad they're listening, and we want more to join.
Yes, and if you want to join us, feel free to hit us up on Pacifica. You stations know how to reach us through Pacifica. We're also looking for sponsorships. If you would like to help pay the bills at this show, besides doing the Patreon deal, you can always give us a call. The phone number here is 231-303-0666. And we'll give you the details on how you can help us out through sponsorships. I have a story. This is a follow-up. We, over 4 years ago, when Jim Gerner and Joe Elder were my co-hosts, we talked about a story out of a small town in Michigan called Oakley. And I have the original story up here, and we've got it posted to our Facebook page. It's a story by Robert Allen and L. Brazier, writing for the Detroit Free Press. It's dated April 15th of 2015. What had happened was the Oakley City Police Chief started a program where you could become a reserve officer. Well, here's how it worked. For, I believe the price was $1,350, something in that neighborhood. You could get a badge, a gun, and a bulletproof vest, and a uniform.
And a secret spy ring.
And they had at least 150 reserve officers. Do you know how big the town of Oakley is?
160 maybe?
300. So they had a population of 300. Among these celebrities that had reserve officer status in the city of Oakley, Michigan, were at least 2 casino owners, a member of the Miami Dolphins football team, and Kid Rock, the singer, if you want to call that singing.
Tell me this isn't reminiscent of the scene in the old Western where the guy walks into the bar, right? And says, all right, man, we got some Redskins outside of town. We need deputies. And they take their last shot of whiskey, right? Mm-hmm. Pin on that silver badge. 150 out of 300 people. Hey, listen, I mean, we can say police state because of the increase of weapons that are sold by the Army to the police departments, and by the violence, and by the number of KKK leaders, like the one just a few miles from here that was discovered to be a KKK member and was on the police force. We can point to all those issues, but when you take half the population of a city and deputize them,
yeah,
I dare say,
and they weren't even citizens of the town. That's the thing.
Well, what we also covered in the show, remember the guy that shot the black man out in, I think, Missouri, someplace? He was he was given a weekend's chance to ride in the car, like a little kid.
Yeah.
And just blew away some guy.
It was an older gentleman.
Yeah, thought he was reaching for his taser. When the media got a hold of it, some good media anyway, they discovered this guy had been a big financial supporter of the sheriff, the same sheriff that said, hey, why don't you ride along with us on the stagecoach this weekend?
Yeah, of course. Of course. I want to get to this part of the original story. Again, this is back from April of 2015. This is the Detroit Free Press. Oakley Police Chief Rob Resnick has said the reserves program has been beneficial to the town and that donations many of the reserve officers made to the village weren't required and have helped the public good. Village records indicate about half of the reserve officers donated, and the reserves are among people who have made donations totaling almost $183,000 from the period of 2009 to 2014.
Hey, a little feeling of power is worth the money. Come on.
The Michigan Attorney General's office, in a filing supporting the release of the police department records under the Freedom of Information Act, called the donors phantom philanthropists who should not be allowed to use the FOIA laws to claim they are exempt as police officers. The improperly appointed reserve officers don't meet state employment standards for police officers, such as completing police academy training, testing, and more. That was from a February 9, 2015 brief from the Attorney General's office. See, it says here, going further down in the story, typically, reservists each pay $1,300 for a uniform, gun, and armored vest, according to a former reserve officer who said he was not required to donate money to the township. The officers are not paid by the village, but are granted special gun permits that allow them to carry pistols in places usually prohibited, such as casinos, bars, and sports stadiums, even when they are not on duty. Among the village reserve officers are Michael Malik, a Birmingham millionaire who helped develop Motor City Casino Hotel; Matt Cullen, a longtime civic leader and top executive in Dan Gilbert's Rock Ventures; Jason Fox, a former Detroit Lion now playing for the Miami Dolphins; and Albert DePolo Jr., a prominent urologist who practices at several local hospitals. Records indicate all except Fox had also personally donated to Oakley. And they did mention Kid Rock, the singer.
I think they contacted Clint Eastwood, too, but he turned it down.
little further into the story here. Resnick had fought efforts by a local bar and others under the Freedom of Information Act to obtain lists of donors and reserve officers. The lists were released by the village following a lengthy legal fight with the family tavern in Oakley, which sued over alleged harassment by the local police. Well, yesterday, I'm stopping the story right here. Yesterday, I met one of the owners, who's now a former owner of the family tavern. And boy, did he fill me in on a lot of behind-the-stage kind of stuff with this. Apparently, one of the cops was going in and hitting on one of his 19-year-old waitresses. You know, oh, you need to come home with me, you need to do this, you need to do that. And she went to the owner and said, I'm going to have to quit. Well, why? You're a good bartender, you're a good waitress. Why are you quitting? Well, because this officer is harassing me. So he told the cops, basically, stop coming in and harassing my staff. Stop sexually harassing my staff. They decided to fight a war with the bar owner, and the bar owner wasn't going to take any of it. He told me all this. He ended up getting elected to the Oakley City Council, which the first thing he did at the first meeting that he attended is he demanded from the treasurer all the records of this reservist program. Where's the money going? Mm-hmm. Is the money, are the checks being made payable to the city of Oakley?
You mean the donation money?
Yeah.
Sure. Seems responsible.
She didn't want to reveal that information.
No, hell no, she didn't.
So he says, well, are you an elected official or are you a paid employee of the city? Well, I earn a paycheck from... Well, good. I'm your boss. I'm telling you, I am giving you a direct order to do your job and turn the records over to us. And she refused to.
It's incriminating.
And she said, well, if this is going to be the way that it is, then I might as well just resign. He says, okay, I'll accept your resignation. Do I have a second? He got a second. The board voted right on the spot and kicked her out.
Good.
And she, I guess, stormed out of the meeting.
Good, keep storming.
And he made the comment that he wasn't going to be a part of any money laundering that was going on with the city. 2 days later, he's out on his property. He comes back. There's 5 unmarked police cruisers in his yard. State cop, 4 feds. He comes in, and they said, what's this about money laundering that you said 2 nights ago at the city meeting? So he filled them in on what was happening. So the feds started an investigation into this whole brouhaha over these reservists. Eventually, this police chief got fired. Well, I've got an update for you, folks. This is from MLive. This is written by Cole Waterman, writing out of Bay City, Michigan. A former police chief in rural Michigan who assembled a large reserve police force and sold its members firearms and ammunition for profit is heading to federal prison. 60-year-old Robert J. Resnick of Swartz Creek on Thursday, July 18th, appeared before U.S. District Judge Thomas L. Ludington for sentencing. Resnick, former chief of the Oakley Police Department in Saginaw County in March, pleaded guilty to wire fraud and filing a false 2012 income tax return. The former charge is a 20-year felony, while the latter is punishable by a 3-year prison term. Resnick's sentencing guidelines range from 12 to 18 months. After hearing elocution from attorneys on both sides of the case and Resnick himself, Ludington imposed 2 concurrent prison terms of 1 year and 1 day, to be followed by 1 year of supervision.
So it's 2 years and 2 days.
No, it's concurrent. They're not consecutive. So he's going to serve them both at the same time.
Okay.
Ludington also ordered Resnick to pay $124,078.88 in restitution to the Internal Revenue Service and $4,053.77 for the cost of his prosecution.
Darren, I wasn't with the show then. This was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember even hearing this. So fill me in a couple details. This is the guy that made the offer to citizens to be a deputy for $1,000. What was
a reserve officer, $1,300.
And that amassed how much money?
$183,000 from the period of 2009 to 2014. That according to records
and
obtained through
FOIA. And obviously the treasurer
FOIA.
realized this money did not go to a park in town there or anything else. It went where? Right?
At that point, nobody knew. Nobody knew where it went because the treasurer refused to divulge, and the treasurer resigned.